I came home early, overheard my supposedly sick husband plotting to take our house. So I followed the paper trail, stopped the property transfer at the county office, and kicked him out before his plan could succeed. I heard his voice before I heard the words. That's the detail that stopped me in my own hallway. Not what he was saying, not yet. Just the sound of him strong, clear. The unhurried, confident register of a man who is completely in control of a situation. My husband had been dying for 3 days or so, I'd been told. I stood there with a grocery bag in my left hand, tomato soup, saltines, the specific ginger tea he'd asked for twice by text, and I listened to the voice of a man who did not sound remotely like he needed any of those things. The bag crinkled when my grip tightened. I made myself go still. She can't suspect anything before Friday. The words reached me in sequence, each one landing separately like something dropped from a height. She suspect Friday. A woman's voice came back through his phone, sharp, impatient, carrying the particular familiarity of two people who have been having a version of this conversation for a while and are tired of having it. Stop stalling. You promised the deed and the confirmation. The word deed hit me somewhere below the chest, below thought, in the part of the body that understands things before the mind catches up. My name is Kara Whitfield. I'm 44 years old, and I was standing in my own hallway on a Wednesday at 12:18 p.m., listening to my husband plan the end of my life. I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I stood completely still, and I listened, and I listened, and I listened. I've already moved the money, Gavin said, calm, easy, unhurried, like a man who had been planning this for a very long time because he had. Let me back up. I had been married to Gavin Whitfield for 11 years. We met in the way that people meet when they're 33, and their social circles have calcified into workplace acquaintances and the occasional setup. Through a mutual friend at a birthday dinner, seated next to each other by what felt like accident and was probably not. Gavin was an operations manager at a logistics company, Practical, organized, the kind of man who kept a running grocery list on his phone and remembered that you'd mentioned your car needed an oil change and texted you about it 3 days later. I found these qualities deeply attractive at 33. I had spent my 20s with charismatic, unreliable men, and I was ready, genuinely ready for someone who showed up. He showed up. For a long time, he showed up. I was a regional sales director for a pharmaceutical distributor, stable salary, good benefits, enough travel to keep things interesting, and enough structure to keep things sane. We bought the house in year 3 of our marriage, a 4-bedroom in a neighborhood we'd driven through once and agreed on immediately in the way that couples agree on things when they still have the same instincts. I put in 60% of the down payment because my income was higher, and we structured the ownership accordingly. Joint tenancy, both names on the deed, both names on the mortgage. Our names together on the thing we built together. I want to say I didn't see it coming that the signs weren't there, but when I look back honestly, and I've had a lot of time in the months since to look back honestly, the signs were there. I just kept looking at them through the lens of the story I believed. The late nights that started about a year ago explained as project pressures that never resolved. The phone that was always face down, always with the consistency of habit rather than the occasional oversight of someone who simply forgets. The way he'd stopped asking about my work with the specific interest he used to bring to those conversations. Not unpleasantly absent, just quietly withdrawn like a tide going out so gradually you don't notice the waterline changing. And the money, the small things. A question I'd asked in January about a transfer on our joint statement, $3,800 marked only as a vendor payment that he'd explained smoothly, and that I'd accepted because he was the one who managed our accounts, and I trusted him with that, the way I trusted him with most practical things. I should have looked harder. I didn't. I made my adjustments the way you make adjustments inside a marriage. I told myself the distance was normal, that long-term relationships had seasons, that we were in a difficult one and would move through it. I bought the soup and the saltines and the ginger tea because the man I believed I was married to was sick and needed them, and I came home at lunch on a Wednesday to leave them on the nightstand. Then I heard his voice. I stepped into the kitchen. I set the grocery bag on the counter. I moved at normal speed with normal weight with the particular deliberate calm of someone who has understood in an instant that the next 60 seconds are going to require performance. Hi, I said. I home for a minute. Gavin appeared in the doorway 20 seconds later. The transformation was, I have to give him this. Impressive. The blanket was around his shoulders. His eyes were red and soft, which I now understood he'd achieved by pressing the heels of his hands against them before he walked in. His voice dropped to the strained, effortful register he'd been using for 3 days. He coughed into his fist once, twice. What are you doing here? Weak smile, genuine surprise behind it, which was the only real thing in the expression. I brought soup, I said, How are you feeling? A little better, maybe? He moved to the refrigerator slowly, carefully. You didn't have to come all the way home. I watched him every movement, every micro adjustment. The performance was meticulous. I thought about the voice I'd heard in the hallway, the confident, unhurried control of it, and then I looked at the shuffling, careful man in front of me, and the dissonance between those two things was so total that it required a specific conscious effort not to let it show on my face. Who were you talking to? I asked casual, reaching into the grocery bag. Work stuff. He didn't look at me, looked past me at the window over the sink in the specific way of someone maintaining eye contact without making eye contact, just some project follow-up on your sick day. He coughed. You know how it is. I do, I said. I put the soup in the cabinet. I told him to rest. I kissed him on the cheek. He was warm, which meant nothing. He was always warm. And I walked to the front door and I left. I sat in my car in my own driveway and I breathed. Deed Friday. She can't suspect anything. I've already moved the money. My phone buzzed. Midwest Federal Bank account change confirmation. I read the notification twice. I had never set up account change alerts. I did not have account change alerts, which meant someone had set up account change alerts on a schedule they hadn't anticipated. A courtesy notification that had gone to my phone instead of wherever it was supposed to go. I pulled out of the driveway. I drove to the bank. The branch manager's name was Kevin Albright. I know this because I asked for his name specifically because I was already in the 18 minutes between my driveway and the bank parking lot thinking about documentation. He was young and professional, and he pulled up our account with the specific, careful attention of someone who has been trained to recognize when a situation is not routine. A new phone number was added to the account this morning, he said. He looked at his screen, not at me. Mail notifications are now routed to an address registered to, he checked the information, Jordan Russell. Jordan Russell. I didn't know that name. I stored it. There's also a pending request, Kevin said, and now he looked at me to remove you as joint account holder. The room was very quiet. My hands were on the counter. I looked at them. They were not shaking. I made a specific decision that they would not shake. Not because I was not feeling the thing that makes hands shake, but because shaking was not useful right now, and I needed every available resource directed somewhere useful. Freeze it, I said, right now, in-person verification only. Nothing moves on this account without me standing in this building. Kevin nodded. He was already typing. I'll also need documentation of the changes made this morning, I said. Time stamps the phone number, added the mailing address and the name on that address. He printed it while I watched. I walked out of the bank with 4 pages of documentation and a frozen account and a name, Jordan Russell, that I did not yet have a complete picture of, but that I was going to have a complete picture of before the day was over. I called Holly from the parking lot. Holly Marsh was a paralegal. She had been my closest friend for 9 years, and she was the kind of woman who treated injustice like a personal affront. Not loudly, not dramatically, but with the specific, focused energy of someone who has spent her professional life understanding exactly where the pressure points are in legal and institutional systems, and exactly how to apply force to them. She picked up on the second ring. I told her everything fast and complete. The voice in the hallway, the words I'd heard, the bank notification, Kevin Albright's information, the name Jordan Russell. She was quiet for approximately 4 seconds. County Recorder's Office, she said. Go today before 5 o'clock. Why deed, she said simply. Like the word I'd heard in the hallway had told her everything she needed to know. If he's planning something for Friday, there's paperwork already filed or in process. County Recorder keeps real property records. I'll meet you there. She was already in the car by the time we hung up. We found it in 9 minutes. The clerk, a woman named Deborah, County Recorder's Office, 22 years of institutional patience, pulled it up on her screen with the unhurried efficiency of someone who processes 100 documents a day and has learned to read people's reactions to them. A quick claim deed scheduled to file Friday. Gavin's share of our joint tenancy property, our house, the one with the 4 bedrooms, the one with the back porch I'd spent a summer furnishing, the one with both our names on the title being transferred to Russell Asset Group, LLC, Gavin Whitfield, listed as registered agent, LLC, formation date 2 months ago. Holly stood beside me and read it twice. Then she looked at me. 2 months, she said. 2 months, I said. I looked at the document on the screen at Gavin's name at the date of formation 2 months ago in September, when we had gone to dinner for our anniversary and he had given me a card that said things I will not repeat here because they are no longer appropriate and because the ink was barely dry on the LLC paperwork when he signed them. This wasn't a fight. Holly said quietly. She was reading what I was reading. This wasn't a breakdown. No, I said. This was a project. I nodded. Okay. She turned from the screen. Her voice shifted to the register she used when she was working. Here's what we do next. I drove home. I made dinner, a real dinner pasta salad, the kind of meal that takes actual effort because the only thing I had decided in the car on the way back was that Gavin was not going to know between now and Friday that anything had changed. He had a plan with a Friday deadline. I had 2 days. 2 days to build something that would still be standing on the other side of whatever he thought he was going to do. He came down from the bedroom when the food was ready, still in the blanket, still with the cough. I watched him perform all of it with the particular attention of someone who now understood exactly what she was watching. You didn't have to cook, he said. I wanted to, I said. We ate. We talked about nothing. He asked about my afternoon, and I told him about a sales call, and he nodded, and I watched his eyes and saw nothing there but the practiced ease of a man who believed his plan was still intact, and that the woman across the table from him had not stood in his hallway at 12:18 p.m. and heard every word. When I refilled his water, he said, "Thank you." I said, "You're welcome." After dinner, he went back upstairs. I cleared the table. I washed the dishes. Then I sat at the kitchen counter with my laptop and my phone, and I called 3 people. The first was Holly, who walked me through exactly what she needed to do at the county recorder's office and what it would accomplish and what it wouldn't. The second was a real estate attorney named Patricia Crane, family law and property, 14 years of practice, referred by Holly, who answered her phone at 8:45 p.m. because Holly had texted her first to tell her I was calling and that it was important. Patricia was brisk and precise, and she asked questions in a sequence that told me she had already understood the shape of the problem before I finished explaining it. Thursday morning, she said, I'll file a notice of marital interest on the property. It goes on record with the county. Any transfer, any deed filing, any change to that title gets flagged and stopped pending review. She paused. Can you confirm joint tenancy? Both names on the deed. I have the original filing. Good. Send it to me tonight. I scanned it and sent it at 9:12 p.m. The third call was to a forensic accountant named David Lim, referred by Patricia, who used him regularly in divorce cases involving financial concealment. 14 years with an audit firm before going independent. He had the specific methodical patience of someone who had spent a career following money through the places people put it when they don't want it found. I told him about the joint account, the $3,800 transfer in January, the LLC, Jordan Russell. How much access do you have to the account records? He asked. Full. Joint account. My name is on it. Send me everything from the last 18 months, he said. I'll have something for you by Thursday evening. I stayed up until 1 a.m. pulling records and sending files. Upstairs, Gavin coughed twice in the dark. He only coughed when I was in the room. I now understood, or when he thought I was. Thursday arrived. Patricia filed the notice of marital interest at 9:47 a.m. She texted me the confirmation. Filed. Property is protected. He can't move it without triggering a review. David Lim sent his preliminary report at 6:31 p.m. I read it at my kitchen counter while Gavin was upstairs. Exhibit A through Exhibit E, David labeled them. The man was thorough in the way that I was now deeply grateful for. The $3,800 January transfer had a companion. Several companions, smaller amounts spread across 14 months, all routed to an account David had traced to the same LLC Gavin was the registered agent of. Total, moved $41,200. Jordan, Russell David's note at the bottom indicated was a real person, a woman whose name appeared on the LLC's operating agreement as co-owner. He included the document. I sat with that for a moment, then I printed everything, all of David's exhibits. Kevin Albright's bank documentation, the county deed, filing the LLC formation records, and I put them in a manila folder that I put in my work bag. I went upstairs. Gavin was in bed, blanket arranged, phone face down on the nightstand. Feeling any better? I asked. Maybe a little, he said. Good. I sat on the edge of the bed. I'll work from home tomorrow if you need anything. Something moved behind his eyes, quickly gone. You don't have to do that. I want to be here, I said. He smiled, tired, careful. I smiled back. Friday. I was at the kitchen table at 7 a.m. when Gavin came downstairs. He was wearing his good shirt, pressed collar, the navy one I'd given him for his birthday 3 years ago that he saved for occasions that mattered. Good shoes, hair neat. He looked to anyone observing like a man who had made a full and remarkable recovery from whatever had flattened him for 3 days. He looked like a man who had somewhere important to be. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep." I looked up from my coffee. "Where are you going, county office?" He reached for his keys on the hook by the door, casual back to me. "Routine paperwork. Shouldn't take long." "I'll come," I said. His hand stopped on the keys. 1 second. The particular stillness of a man whose plan has just encountered an unexpected variable and is rapidly calculating. "You don't have to do that," he said. He turned around. The smile was back, warm, easy, the smile of someone who has always known how to deploy warm. "It's boring, just signatures." "I don't mind boring," I said. "I'll drive." The county recorder's office opened at 8:30 a.m. Gavin held the door. He was performing normalcy with the kind of commitment that would have impressed me if I hadn't spent 3 days watching him perform illness with the same commitment. We got in line. When our turn came, he stepped forward and slid the quick claim deed across the counter with the easy confidence of a man who had done his preparation and was now collecting the result. The clerk, not Deborah, a different clerk, a young man with reading glasses, looked at it, looked at his screen, looked at it again. "There's a notice of marital interest on file for this property," he said. His voice was neutral and professional. "This transfer requires supervisor review before it can be processed." Gavin turned to me. The smile was gone, not gradually gone. "What did you do?" he said. His voice was quiet. Not the strained, sick voice, not the warm performance voice. The voice I'd heard in the hallway, controlled, direct, stripped of everything unnecessary, his real voice. I had been waiting to hear it again. "I protected myself," I said. The supervisor's name was Margaret Hollis, County Recorder's Office, 21 years in the department. She had the specific institutional gravity of a woman who has handled contentious property disputes before and has no patience for either party's version of events and a great deal of patience for documentation. She brought us into her office. Gavin presented his deed and explained it as routine financial planning, reorganizing assets, standard restructuring. Nothing unusual about the timing or the method or the fact that his wife was learning about it in a government office rather than at a kitchen table. Margaret looked at him, then at me. "Mrs. Whitfield, did you consent to this transfer?" "No," I said. "Mr. Whitfield claims if my signature appears on anything related to this transfer," I said, placing David Lims's exhibits and Kevin Albright's bank documentation on her desk, "it was forged. I'd like to note that I have forensic accounting documentation of 14 months of asset transfers from our joint account to Russell Asset Group, LLC, the entity this deed is being transferred to, totaling $41,200. None of these transfers had my authorization. I placed the LLC formation documents beside the bank records. I'm prepared to pursue a forgery investigation if a signature purporting to be mine appears on these documents." Margaret looked at the documents, at Gavin, at the documents again. His phone rang. He looked at the screen. Something crossed his face, a flash of something he couldn't manage before it showed. He didn't answer. It rang again. And then, and I want to be precise about this because it is the moment the whole thing became real in a way that no document had quite made it. A woman's voice came through his phone loud enough for Margaret's office to hold it. "I'm downstairs. Tell me it's done." Nobody moved. Gavin's jaw was tight, his hand closed around the phone. "You should answer that," I said quietly. He didn't. She came upstairs 60 seconds later. I heard her before she appeared in the doorway, the efficient click of heels on institutional flooring, the pace of someone who believes they are walking toward a completed transaction. She was tall, black coat, dark hair, the eyes of someone who had been waiting for this Friday for 2 months and was now here to collect. She spotted Gavin and moved toward him with the particular directness of a woman who has stopped caring whether anyone else in the room knows what she is to him. I stepped forward first. "I'm his wife," I said. She stopped. She looked at me, then at Gavin. The confident forward momentum of her entrance reversed in the space of 2 seconds. All that certainty reorganizing itself into something else, something hotter. "You put my email on her bank account." Her voice had risen. Margaret's office was not large. "Are you serious? You told me she had no idea about any Jordan." Gavin's voice was low, controlled, directed at her like a closed door. "Don't Jordan me, ma'am." Margaret's voice cut through cleanly. "I'm going to need you to lower your voice." Security appeared in the doorway, a heavy-set man named, according to his badge, Officer D. Watts. He assessed the room with the calm of someone who has been called to county offices before and has seen variations of this. Jordan looked at Gavin with an expression I recognized not from my own marriage, but from every story I'd ever heard about the moment someone understands they were not the architect but the instrument. Gavin said nothing. His face, which had held so many expressions over so many years, the warmth, the confidence, the careful performance of 3 days of illness, the easy confidence of a man who believed he was managing a situation, had simply gone blank. The expressions had run out. Margaret folded her hands on her desk. Mr. Whitfield, the transfer is halted, pending a full legal review. Given what's been presented today, I'm required to flag this filing with the county attorney's office. She looked at him steadily. I'd recommend you retain legal counsel before your next steps. I picked up my documents from her desk. At Gavin one final time. We'll speak through lawyers, I said. I walked out. The next morning, I came back to the house with 3 people. Sheriff's Deputy Carla Webb, 12 years with the county, referred by Patricia Crane, who had called in a favor, stood to my right with the court order Patricia had filed the previous afternoon, which established my exclusive right to occupy the marital home pending the divorce proceedings. A locksmith named Frank stood to my left with a bag of equipment and the quiet professional demeanor of a man who has changed locks on contested houses before and considers it a service rather than a spectacle. And Patricia Crane stood behind me with a briefcase that contained documentation I hoped we would not need, and was glad we had. I rang the doorbell. Gavin opened it. He was in the clothes he'd slept in. He had not anticipated us, or he had anticipated us and not prepared, which amounted to the same thing. He looked at the 4 of us on his doorstep, and his face went through something rapid and complicated. Kara, his voice was the real voice, no performance left in it. Listen, can we just... I need to explain. Deputy Webb, I said. Carla stepped forward and handed him the order. He read it. He looked up. This is my house too, he said. You attempted to transfer it without my consent, Patricia said calmly. You removed yourself as joint account holder without my client's knowledge. You transferred $41,200 of marital assets to an LLC over 14 months. The court agreed a protective order was warranted. I want to talk to you, Gavin said to me, looking past Patricia, past Carla at me. Just us, just for 5 minutes. I let him finish, then I nodded at Frank. Frank walked past Gavin into the house and began assessing the locks with the business-like efficiency of a man on a schedule. Gavin stood on the porch and watched him. Then he looked at me. I was going to be fair, he said. I looked at him at the good shirt from yesterday, wrinkled now at the face I had known for 11 years that I had trusted with the practical architecture of our life, the accounts, the property, the structures you build together and assume will stand. Gavin, I said you faked being sick for 3 days so I wouldn't notice what you were doing. You moved $40,000 out of our joint account. You set up an LLC 2 months ago and filed a deed to take the house while I was making you soup. I paused. What exactly would fair look like? He had nothing. Frank emerged from the doorway. Done, he said. I handed Gavin the 2 keys. His new keys, the ones that worked on the new locks, because I was not leaving him without access to his belongings. Because despite everything, I was not going to be that. He took them. This isn't over, he said quietly, not threatening something smaller than that the last thing you say when you've run out of other things. He picked up the bag he'd packed. He walked down the porch steps. I watched him reach his car, watched him get in, watched the reverse lights come on. Then I turned back to the house. The gray blanket was still folded on the living room couch where he'd left it. The prop from 3 days of performance, now just a blanket, in a house where only one person lived. I stood in my own doorway and looked at it. 2 months of planning, an LLC, a woman named Jordan Russell, a Friday deadline he'd been working toward while I left soup on the nightstand. I walked inside. I picked up the blanket, and I folded it properly the way you fold things when you're putting them away for good, and I set it on the chair by the window. Then I made coffee and I sat at my kitchen table with the morning light coming through the windows I had chosen in the house where my name was on the deed, and I opened my laptop. I had work to do. His Friday plan was over. Mine was just starting. 6 months later, the divorce was finalized in March. Patricia Crane was as advertised thorough. The asset documentation David Lim provided formed the backbone of the settlement, and the attempted property transfer combined with the bank records gave the court a clear picture of what Gavin had been building for 2 months in the basement of our marriage. The house is mine. The $41,200 in improperly transferred assets was factored into the settlement. Gavin's attorney, someone less effective than he'd have liked because the good ones reviewed the documentation and apparently had concerns about the case, negotiated what he could. David Lim flagged one additional item in his final report. The LLC Russell Asset Group had a second investor whose identity Gavin had not disclosed. That disclosure became relevant to the divorce proceedings in ways his attorney had not anticipated. I will leave the details there. Jordan Russell called me once. I don't know how she got my number. She called on a Saturday morning in January and I let it ring, and she left a voicemail that I have not deleted and that I have listened to twice. She said she hadn't known he was married, which I do not believe. She said she was sorry, which I believe less. She said she hoped I was okay, which I found under the circumstances not particularly useful. I am okay. I want to be clear about that because it matters. Holly came over the Friday evening after the county office and brought wine and didn't ask me how I was feeling, which was exactly right. And we sat on my back porch for 3 hours and talked about everything except what had happened, and then eventually about what had happened. And I told her about the soup and the ginger tea and the 3 days of performance, and she said something that I've thought about many times since. He underestimated you, she said. They always underestimate the one who does the caring. I thought about that. He miscounted the days, I said. Holly looked at me. He needed me not to know until Friday, I said. He came home Tuesday. He miscounted. She was quiet for a moment. He miscounted, she said. He thought he had more time than he had. I looked at my backyard, the yard I had planted, the garden I'd built over 3 summers, the porch where I'd spent uncountable evenings. He forgot that I come home at lunch sometimes. Holly picked up her wine to lunch, she said. I picked up mine to lunch, I said.